Welcome to the New England Football Show presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. And as always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone. And we're coming to you tonight because obviously last night we were both a little busy over at Gillette Stadium covering the Patriots on Monday Night Football. Of course, Patriots picking up a big 33-15 win over the New York Giants. Before we start the conversation, and we're going to go about 40 minutes here. So we're going to go a little shorter than we usually do. But before we do that, Kevin, how are you this evening?
Doing good, man. Tired, but good. How are you?
I'm doing good, and you're coming from your new digs tonight.
Yes, finally starting to settle in, but having to move before Monday Night Football is something I do not wish on anyone.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you got it done. You were able to get into your new place before the game, so you know what? That's all that matters in the end is that you got it done. You found a way to get it done. And speaking of getting it done, if you're looking to sell your current home, purchase your next home, purchase your first home or refinance, then you need someone who can get it done. And that someone is Herb Devine. Give him a call at 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. With over 27 years of experience, Herb has the knowledge and the know-how to help guide you through this process. It's not an easy process to purchase a home or refinance. You need experience on your side. That experience is Herb Devine. Again, his number is 781-254-2846. Or you could shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. All right, Kevin, obviously Patriots pick up the 33-15 win last night. They improved to 11-2, 10 straight wins for the New England Patriots. They're on a bye this week before they come back from their bye to host the Buffalo Bills on December 14th. Impressive win last night, a three-phase win. When you look at how they did it, they jumped out to a 30-7 lead, never looked back. They did it on special teams. They did it on offense. They did it on defense. It was arguably, in my opinion, their most impressive performance of the season. Did you see it that way?
Yeah, of course. When it was 17-0, I looked at you. That had like 56-10 written all over it. They took their foot off the gas, I thought, in the second quarter. That second half, we've both seen and been a part of games where both teams know it's over. It's just a matter of getting out of there. And thankfully, they get out of there healthy as well. But yeah, that's the best they've looked probably all season. But I just keep going back to the consistency. Like they had an extra few days off, and Mike Vrabel talked about it leading into the game, and then again today, he wanted to see them attack because it is a longer week. When you're waiting for Monday Night Football, that's the most aggressive I think they've been all year on both sides, but obviously more so on defense. And that's how we're going to have to play when the weather is the way it was last night. And teams should not want to come in here. We talked earlier in the season about making this a hard place to play again. That was a hard stadium to play in last night. And we always joke, it's sort of like watching in a funeral home when you're in the press box, but you could still tell how loud it was there last night. So the fact that they're getting that juice back in the stadium, I think the team is feeding off it. And I wrote this last night, and we talked about this at, I don't know, 1 a.m. in the parking lot. I think they're a Super Bowl contender. I really do. I just look at the landscape of the AFC, and you look at what it looked like last night. Obviously, you still have to play Baltimore, still have to play Buffalo. You're going to have to win at least one playoff game just to get to an AFC championship. But this could be one of those years where they're as good, if not better, than anybody else, and they find a way to get to California, and then we'll talk about if they can beat an NFC team. But right now, after seeing last night, hard not to think they're one of the best teams in the NFL.
They are. I'm still very skeptical to label them a Super Bowl contender. I said that last night on the postgame show to John Lyons, where I think we could start having the conversation, but I'm still leery to have the conversation only because I still see a nightmare scenario where somehow Kansas City finds a way to get in. They get in, whether the Patriots are the 1 or the 2 seed. Let's say Kansas City's the 7 seed. They draw them in the wild card round. They come in here, beat you, bounce you, put an end to a great season. Now, if you're a Patriot fan and that scenario plays out, I don't necessarily think you should be upset by that because I don't look. If you had said to 90% of the people here that by the time this team gets to their bye, they're going to be 11-2 and be the number 1 seed in the AFC. If you had said that to people at the beginning of the season, they would have been like, hell yeah, I'm taking that all day. None of us saw them being this good. They have definitely exceeded expectations. And to a degree, yes, it's been the schedule. But I do think we need to start giving this team a lot more credit. When you keep pointing to the schedule and saying, well, the reason they're this good is because they haven't played anybody, I think it's disingenuous and unfair. This football team deserves a lot more credit than that. That being said, like I said, I'm not fully ready to commit to the narrative that this is a Super Bowl contender. I'm not quite there yet. Now, if they come out in 2 weeks, beat Buffalo at home, which if they did that, they'd pretty much wrap up the division. If they beat Buffalo at home, then you go on the road on the 21st and you beat Baltimore, well, then, yeah, I mean, I think, look, not only are they a Super Bowl contender, but you'd have to say that they're probably the favorite to get there in the AFC. And one thing we do know is if the Patriots do, in fact, get home field advantage in the playoffs, this can be a tough place to play. We saw that during the dynasty years between the crowd, between the weather. It's not exactly a desirable place for opposing teams to come in here and play in the playoffs. So the Patriots could potentially have a distinct home field advantage if, in fact, they ended up the 1 seed and ended up hosting the divisional round and beyond. But look, nonetheless, impressive performance. Marcus Jones, 94-yard punt return for a touchdown. Christian Ellis, 2 huge hits. He lights up Jackson Dart along their sideline. He lights up old friend Gunnar Olszewski. Olszewski fumbles. Patriots recover, get a field goal out of it. He played great, had 10 tackles last night. Defense played pretty good outside of a couple of bad drives. And the offense, again, what can you say about Drake May? 24-31, 282, 2 touchdown passes, passer rating of 126. He was phenomenal last night.
The throw to Kyle Williams, I can't believe still. I've watched it like 4 or 5 times today. Hell of a catch by Kyle Williams, too.
I was more impressed with the catch. I said this to a couple people today, and this is not a knock on Drake May. He should make that throw every time. He's in the NFL. It was a great throw. I wasn't as impressed with that as I was with the catch. For him to contort his body the way he did on the landing and not end up out of bounds, to tap in before his knee goes out of bounds, that's big time right there.
Well, it's funny. Kyle Williams was actually joking. He put his hands up, too early. Like he almost allowed the defender to make a play on him. But no, I hear you. You can make the argument that the 3-yard throw to Booty was almost better to put that much touch on it from 3 yards out. I think he's the MVP frontrunner right now. And I don't think, going back to if you had said they would win 11 games at this point in the year, no one would buy it. I don't think anybody thought Drake May would be this far along in year 2. So the MVP chance last night were worth it. They're going to continue to be worth it. And as long as he stays healthy, they can go as far as he takes them.
And, of course, they have the bye week this week, as I mentioned earlier. I think if you had said to Patriot fans at the beginning of this season that this football team entering their bye week would be 11-2 in the number 1 seed in the AFC, I think people would have been doing backflips. They would have been ecstatic. Question now is, Kevin, and we saw this in 2021. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC in 2021. They go into their bye. They come out of their bye, and they get blown out in Indianapolis on a Saturday night. What are you looking for from this football team coming out of the bye? Can we expect them to continue to play at the level they're playing at? Or are you leery that we could potentially end up having a replay of 2021 where perhaps they come back to earth a little bit more because the momentum they had built up until this point ends up grinding to a halt because of the bye week and they lose some of their mojo?
No, one bit. And it's one thing, it's coaching. You know this better than anybody. That team is where they are right now because of the staff, obviously, and because of the players and Drake May. But you know what I'm saying? That staff has completely changed the entire feeling around that building. That locker room today, there was probably 20 guys in there. Now, they had a team meeting at 1 o'clock, but, we're in there 45 minutes early. A lot of guys, go getting treatment or, sorry, is it a brain fart? Out getting treatment or just sort of avoiding us in the training room or whatever it is. Guys were joking around, hanging out in the locker room with the media today. Like, this staff has completely changed the feeling and more so the belief around that building. If you remember that 21 season, that was our first year covering the team. Things didn't feel right from that bye week on and really kind of leading into it.
Yeah.
They were 8-0.
Well, I think the defense collapsed. I mean, they were a top 3 defense
Yeah.
all season, and then coming out of the bye, they fell apart. And really, the offense, as good as they were that year at times, they weren't good enough to overcome the defense not playing well. I agree with you in that. I don't see a collapse like that happening this time around, though. And look, that team was coached by Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach of all time. But I just think that this is a different team. I think it's a different vibe. You mentioned the cultural changes that we've seen under Mike Vrabel. I really, truly believe that Vrabel and the staff are going to will this football team to continue to play at a high level. I don't think they're going to allow this team to take their foot off the gas.
No, and just look at the quarterbacks. Like, give me Drake May over Mac Jones any day of the week coming out of a bye.
Unless you're Kyle Shanahan.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. No, I'd be stunned if they lay an egg against Buffalo. Put it that way. Now,
I could see them losing that game, but I agree with you that I don't see them laying an egg.
No, I could see it being like 17-10, slugfest type of game. Who knows? Maybe you get weather. You never know. But no, there is maybe a 1% chance that they come back and they aren't the same team. This is a completely different, just a complete overhaul from that 21 organization in general, not just the roster or the staff, but everything in that building is different than it was back then.
Well, I think the other thing that's important to point out here, and you saw it more so against Cincinnati than you did last night, but this football team was running on fumes. They were running on fumes. They needed this bye week. And by the way, for what it's worth, and I echoed this sentiment last week, that this week 14 bye to me is ridiculous. You shouldn't have teams on bye weeks this late in the season. First of all, it's not healthy for the players. From a player safety standpoint, I think it's ridiculous that they're going into their bye week now. But I think the other part of it is you started to see the injuries add up here. You lose Milton Williams, you lose Will Campbell, you lose Jared Wilson. This was a team that was running on fumes, and they started to break down. And so, yes, the bye comes at the right time, but it also comes at a price because you lost 3 key starters along your offensive and defensive lines.
It's, Mike Vrabel, and we talked about this a few weeks ago. Vrabel has been cognizant of the rest. Especially for a lot of veteran guys getting maintenance days during the week and stuff. And then last night, I didn't even realize it until today, Robert Spillane and Harold Landry, two perfect examples here of guys who didn't play a ton. And Vrabel talked about it today. He said, look, just where we are in the season, I thought that was the right thing to do. With a veteran team like they have, yes, you never want to see the bye come this late, but it's legitimately perfectly timed for them right now.
Well, I mean, like I said, they're running on fumes. They needed it to get here now. This is not the same football team we saw 4 or 5 weeks ago. You didn't see it last night because they were exponentially better than the Giants, but you did see it in that Cincinnati game. That's why I believe they got off to a slow start in that game, because I think that they'd been going since the end of July, and it started to physically catch up with them, and it manifested itself in the way they performed in that game. Now, again, they looked a little fresher last night. They had the extra day with Monday Night Football. But nonetheless, I think this bye comes at a right time, and I think it's a time that they need. So we'll see. And yeah, if nothing else, it gives us an opportunity to recharge our Patriots batteries as we look forward down the stretch here. Of course, the Patriots finish the regular season off at home against Buffalo, at Baltimore, at the New York Jets. And then after the new year, they host the Miami Dolphins in the regular season finale at Gillette before the playoffs kick in. Obviously, they're going to make the playoffs now. It's just a matter of how many more games they win and where they ended up slotting in terms of seeding. You are watching / listening to the New England Football Show, presented by Mortgage Right. I'm your host, John Sarianides. As always, I'm joined by my partner, Kevin Stone, hanging out in his new digs tonight. And just a reminder, if you're looking to sell your current home, purchase your next home, purchase your first home, or refinance, give our good friend Herb Devine a call, 781-254-2846. You can also shoot him an email at herb@mortgageright.com. He and his team are available anytime, including nights and weekends. And we do want to wish Coach Devine and his Scituate Sailors good luck on Saturday. They take on Tewksbury in the Division IV Super Bowl. Should be a hell of a matchup. We're going to talk about briefly, because we've got the high school preview show coming up after this, but Kevin and I will briefly touch on this week's games here in Massachusetts, the state championship games, which begin on Thursday night with Amesbury, Cohasset, and Norwell, Fairhaven. All right, let's shift gears here and talk about college football. Some big news today coming out of Boston College. And before we do that, Ken Matthias checks in, seen some of the post game with both you and John Lyons. Good points made. Unbelievable play for the Patriots last night. Was yesterday's statement by the team heading into the bye week. The hard hitting, setting a tone. I don't know if it was a statement per se. I think they just wanted to get the win and go into the bye week with some momentum, and I think they did that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's statement, but I do think they wanted to let the country know that they're tougher and maybe more physical than people are giving them credit for. Do you agree with that?
I think after last night, they endeared themselves to more of the country. I think
Yeah.
more people now that got an opportunity to see them play nationally, more people now probably believe that this team could be a contender in the AFC. Maybe they might not necessarily be ready, like myself, to label them a Super Bowl contender, but certainly they view them as not just a playoff contender because they're going to make the playoffs, but a team that if they continue to play at this level the rest of the way, could potentially catapult themselves into an AFC title game in a potential Super Bowl appearance. We shall see. Ken, thanks for checking in. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk some college football here. Now I'm going to start with the big news of the day. Blake James putting out a statement today. Of course, Blake James is the athletic director at Boston College. It's been a busy couple of days for Boston College, as Bill O'Brien promised after Saturday's 34-12 win over Syracuse to close out the regular season. O'Brien said that he will be busy and that the staff will be busy in the coming days. Of course, National Signing Day is tomorrow. Boston College has picked up a couple of commitments already, but the big news of the day is athletic director Blake James puts out a statement where he essentially pledges more support for the football program, maximum support. If you read the statement, this is a watershed moment for this football program, Kevin. Today was a big day for this program. Obviously, going 2-10, unacceptable. James talks about that in the letter. He also pledges his support for Bill O'Brien, and the school pledges their support financially. And that, I think, was the biggest takeaway from that statement and what we have to look forward to when it comes to Boston College football.
Well, you had the big news yesterday before that with Kenyatta Watson being named general manager of the program. So I guess we probably should have seen this coming because my first reaction yesterday was, holy crap, they're going to pay a different role. So right there, you knew that money was not going to be an issue anymore. Now, I wrote this today, and I was lucky enough to talk to Kenyatta for about 10 minutes today. He had some fascinating stuff. I put a bunch of it on anyfootballjournal.com, and just a few takeaways. First of all, on the money thing, watershed is an understatement. BC fans have been waiting for this for like 2 decades. And now, obviously, the landscape of college football.
Well,
What would you say?
not to cut you off, to your point, it forced their hand now. That was my initial takeaway when I read the statement today. It's great that you're coming out and saying it now, but it clearly proves that this landscape, this ever-changing landscape, forced their hand. They didn't have a choice. Now they have to spend to compete. If they don't spend to compete, and by the way, they're not done. They got to do more than that. But if they don't spend to compete, it's over. You're not going to be able to stay in the ACC. You're not going to be able to be a Power 4 football program. You either keep up with the Joneses or you're moving out of the neighborhood. It's that simple. I think today is more of an indictment on what this administration has done the last 20-plus years to put the program in a position to be competitive. This is why this program has routinely been a 6-7 win program every year, because from a resource finance standpoint, they just weren't putting enough money into the football program to compete with their ACC brethren. Now, of course, the other part of this as well is the admissions process, which I still think is the elephant in the room and probably needs to be addressed just as much as the money is being addressed.
See, I don't think that's going to change. And talking.
Well, I think they're gonna have to loosen some things up, Kevin. I disagree with you. If they don't, I'm not sure they're going to be able to land the comparable talent that they need to land in the portal to compete with the Miamis, Clemsons, and NC States and Florida States of the conference.
No, I think it should. I just don't know if it's going to. Talking to Watson today, you hear a lot, and I asked him specifically about recruiting, the type of kid BC wants, and I got the typical hey, we have to find the right kid for BC, and not everybody fits. But you know as well as I do, if you're going to start pushing money at kids and actually paying for the level of talent that it takes, well, then those kids just aren't going to be the same academic type of kids that you're used to getting in. It is what it is. Let's call it for what it is. Kids are more focused on getting the bag now than their education. So you can push that 40-year degree, which we've mocked for how long now.
The 40-year decision.
Yeah.
It's about as close as we're going to get to a Boston College degree. So there you go.
You're not lying there. So just a few takeaways from Watson overall today. One, he had interviewed with Halfley back in, I think he said 21. And when he was in Boston, Florida State offered him the job. So they basically swooped in and took him from Halfley. So imagine if Halfley had that GM role. You never know what could have been. Now, granted, obviously, as you well know, he fell ass backwards in the Green Bay job and is now flourishing. But I thought that was interesting just to kind of think of what could have been.
I wouldn't say he fell into that job ass backwards. I mean, he's a good coach, and he had NFL experience. He didn't fall into it ass backwards. Let's give the guy a little bit more credit than that.
So I'm not saying in terms of his talent. I'm saying the timing of it. That was late February or mid-February. So that's what I mean by falling kind of ass backwards into it. But look, Jones and I asked him as well, did he know about the financial commitment? And he said no. But the fact that BC was reaching out to him told him everything he needed to know. So before I keep going, do you believe him? Because I kind of did. I think he had to know that money was coming.
Who, Watson?
Yeah.
I think he had to have been told by O'Brien that the school's willing to make more of a financial commitment. Yes.
Right.
Now, do I think that O'Brien gave him specifics? No. But I'm sure O'Brien said, hey, they're willing to commit financially what they're willing to commit. Maybe O'Brien knew, maybe he didn't know. The bottom line is, I do think to I don't want to say entice, but to encourage Watson to come back to his alma mater. Yes. I'm sure that O'Brien probably said to him, look, you're going to have the resources that you need here to make us competitive from a player acquisition standpoint.
Yeah, so we're on the same page there. Look, he left Auburn where he was an elite recruiter to come take this job. And he was very adamant about, there's something different about your alma mater and coming home to work for BC and all that stuff. So, look, they're all in now. So now they've also, if you kind of read the details in that statement, they're putting the onus on donors as well. It's either, stop looking over some checks. We're going to match it. But, stop complaining if you're not chipping in too. Which, if I'm a fan, it's now I'm okay with that. Before, it would be like, well, what the hell are you talking about? You're not spending the money anyway. So, but it's putting the onus on the fan base a little bit too, which I thought was good. I love everything about this, especially, again, from our standpoint. When they're good, we're good. So, now, I also asked him if he thought BC can be that proverbial fifth team. That's still hard for me to wrap my head around, but he's gung-ho and said, look, it takes winning. I think it takes more than that. And I asked him about Alumni Stadium as well. You and I have both ragged on that place for quite a while. I think they need to upgrade that place as well. But it's nice to at least hear that they're portraying an all-in mentality. Because I didn't think they were – personally, I think they got fed up of listening to people like us kind of rip them and how they were going about their business above Bill O'Brien.
I don't think it had anything to do with us. I think it had to do with the harsh reality of going 2-10.
That too.
No, that is the reason why they made this decision. They, with all due respect, they don't give two shits what you and I think or anybody else who covers that team. And what I mean by that is they may listen to the noise, but if you think that they're going to make decisions based on what we're saying or anybody else who covers that program, does it influence their decision making potentially? Maybe.
Yeah, that's
right.
But
at the end of the day, it's all about going 2-10. It's all about the alumni and the fan base screaming and complaining, and they recognize, look, we tried to get along with what we were investing in the football program. It's not enough. They had an epiphany. UMass had an epiphany, hiring Thor Bjorn, pledging to spend more money. These programs are late to the party, man, And at the end of the day, they realize you can't get by anymore being Northeast academic schools that people want to come to, and that it's okay if you go 6-6, 7-5, and get to a bowl game, and as a bonus you win and go, 7-6 or 8-5. Those days are over. That's not good enough anymore. That can't be the standard anymore. Going 2-10 is why they decided to do what they did today, because they recognize, especially with a new president coming in the spring, they recognize that this shit's not good enough anymore. What they've been doing, not just this year, forget about the 2-10, what they've been doing for the last 15 to 20 years isn't good enough anymore. They're a lower middle of the pack football program in the ACC. And if they want to be taken serious, and if they want to have any shot at potentially winning the conference and getting into the college football playoff, they have got to either shit or get off the pot. If they don't do that, then they might as well fall back into FCS status and join either the Patriot League or the CAA and play in one of those leagues. And no disrespect to those leagues, but Boston College views itself as a P4 program. If they're going to be a P4 program, it's about time they started acting like one.
So just to go back to my original point, I'm with you. I think the noise in the media helped contribute to this. I'm not saying they're listening to me and you and saying, oh shit, we got to make sure they're on our, our good side. Obviously, they're not basing decisions on the New England football show, but I do think the chatter amongst the media, you mentioned the fan base, I think it all it's all encompassing at this point. I think, frankly, to your point, they don't want to be embarrassed anymore. This was an embarrassing season on a number of different levels. And I think Bill O'Brien is partly responsible for saying, look, are you going to help me out or not? Plain and simple, because he needed the help. We've been saying it for 2 months now. So I do think all that chatter was all encompassing and ultimately led to today. So look, actions speak louder than words. I'll believe all this when I see it, but it feels like they're going in the right direction. The only problem now is if they do start spending money and you win 5 games, now you're screwed. Because
you're not screwed.
No?
Listen, you can spend all the money you want, Kevin. There's no guarantee you're going to win. It comes down to, obviously, they're going to have to turn this roster over. As we've said the last couple of weeks, if they want to turn this program around, you're going to need 30 to 35 new players next year. You can't run it back with a lot of the returning guys on this roster. They can come back, and I'm sure a decent amount of them will probably enter the portal. But at the end of the day, you've really got to turn this roster over. Because if you don't, and you try to run it back with what you're bringing in terms of high school recruiting and the guys that are currently on the roster, you're not going to be much better than maybe 2 wins, 3 tops. So they need to turn the roster over. And I think what this says is they're willing to make the financial commitment to do that.
You're saying financial commitment in terms of the portal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Player acquisition.
So that's what I mean in terms of if you make all this effort and you do turn over the roster, I'm with you there. You're probably right, 30, 35 guys. If you do make this commitment and you do spend money on portal guys, but they're all the wrong guys and all that stuff, and you still end up losing.
But you can't, if you're and I get what you're saying, but if you're the administration,
you can't look at it.
And there's a good chance that can happen. I mean, let's be realistic here.
Yeah.
In this day and age of turning over rosters every year, it's hard to win consistently. And unless you're adding top tier talent that allows you to stay on top, like the Ohio States and the Georgias and the LSUs of the world, unless you're adding that type of talent, it's hard to consistently be good because you can't build a cohesive football team. It makes it hard. It's part of your roster is a collection of mercenaries that wanted to go to their next school and get paid. So that makes it hard. All that being said, if let's say next year they go 5-7, well, then you can't come back if you're the administration and say, well, we gave you money, we gave you more resources, and you didn't win. Now we're going to pull back. You can't do it. You can't. Either you're all in or you're not. This is an all-in process moving forward. This has to be their approach moving forward. If it's not, then you're not a Power 4 football program. You're not an ACC football program. You really should consider doing something else with your football program. It's either you make this commitment on a year-to-year basis and deal with the results as they come, or figure it out and go somewhere else because you're not a Power 4 ACC program. So we'll see. Speaking of programs in New England, of course, big news last week out of UConn, Jim Mora leaving the Huskies After 4 seasons and 27 wins, Mora rather is taking his talent out west. He took over the Colorado State football program. That was made official with a press conference yesterday. A couple of things that were interesting to me in that press conference. One, Mora said that he had been eyeing this job since 2019, which is a little concerning to me. And then when the job opened up in October after Colorado State fired Jay Norvell, of course, the Rams went 2-10 this year, that he decided that he needed to go for it. Now, look, a lot of UConn fans have gone back and forth online asking whether or not Mora did this for money. He didn't do it for money because essentially he's making the same amount of money that he made at UConn. And I've said this from the beginning. I think he did it for 2 reasons. 1, be closer to family. 2, he wants to be at a program that's in a conference that gives him an opportunity to build a program and potentially compete for the college football playoff. Win the conference, get into the college football playoff. That's what he wanted. And a lot of people have said, why the hell would you leave UConn to go to Colorado State? And that's a very fair question. However, all that being said, you got to remember, he just turned 64. He's not a spring chicken. While he probably would have garnered some attention with some of the bigger Power 4 programs, at the end of the day, he was going to have to make a move like this if he wanted to get out of UConn and have an opportunity to potentially win a conference and potentially make the college football playoff.
So in terms of, looking at the job since 2019, if he did a good job not showing it. The program got better every year.
Yes, this is a huge loss. Huge loss.
Except for
and I hate to say it, Kevin. I'm going to be that guy. I'm not sure you replace him. Even if you decide to keep it in-house and hire Samus and give him a shot, you're not replacing Jim Mora. Jim Mora is a tone setter. He resets the culture. He knows how to win. He's been a long-time head coach. He has a plan, and he implemented that plan to perfection at UConn. And I hate to tell you, no one could have done a better job than the job Jim Mora has done with that program the last 4 years. And replacing him and what he did there, I think it's going to be awfully difficult. It's not me being negative. I love the UConn football program. People know I've been drinking the blue Kool-Aid now for a while. I think at the end of the day, though, you're not going to replace him. You're not going to replace him, period. You're going to have to hope that you hire someone that can take the baton and keep it going. I'm not sure you're going to hire someone who can take it to another level.
Well, I think you might be looking at the FCS level, a young kind of up-and-coming coach that might want that opportunity to take that next step. But look, in terms of going to Colorado, you're right. He's 64. The rivalry game against Colorado alone will get more attention than any game he ever played or coached at UConn. Look, no, I did say he got better every year. That year, too, was an aberration. But look, what was it, 3 bowl games in 4 years, 4 and 5, whatever it was.
Phenomenal job.
And now look, NIL-wise.
You got to also remember what he inherited there. That gets lost on people. They look at the 3 bowl games in 4 years, back-to-back 9-win seasons. Mm-hmm. They look at all of that stuff. But you need to see what he inherited there, what he took over from Randy Edsall. Randy Edsall took that program to new heights his first time around. Yeah. Couldn't replicate that success. But this was a program that was bottom 5 in the country in FBS. It was one of the worst programs in the country.
They were at the same level.
And in the span of 1 year, really, if you think about it, 1 year they go 6-6, go to the Myrtle Beach Bowl. They lose that game, but still, year 2 was a disappointment. But what he's done the last 2 years there in an FBS independent school that's not in a conference, I mean, I don't know if too many other people could have done the job he did there.
And he's a big reason why the NIL collective became what it became there as well. So, and to your point about going to Colorado, he's an excellent recruiter. Now he's got resources to use. So if I would have taken that job in a heartbeat,
he also had connections in the program. My good friend Brad Sidwell, head coach at Taunton. Mm-hmm. His brother is in the program. He's deputy athletic director. The Sidwells and the Moras go way back. Mm-hmm. Steve Sidwell, Brad and Scott's dad, was Jim Mora's defensive coordinator with the Saints in the 80s, the Dome Patrol Saints. There's a connection there. I knew right away when I saw that Jim was leaving. The first thing I thought was Scoob. That's what we call Brad's brother. Scoob was involved in it. Scoob had to be, and that was confirmed to me after the fact.
Well, it's funny
So
because I asked you right away why Colorado State. You said it makes perfect sense.
yeah,
So
no, I knew right away that
yeah,
Scott played a role in it. He's a football guy. The AD's not really a football guy. There's more of a finance money guy. Scott's a more of a football guy. He played a big hand in Mora landing there. It wasn't by accident. There were inroads there. There was back channeling. Hugh Millen is another name to keep in mind. There is somebody who was back channeling to get him to go to Colorado State. So there's a lot of connections there. But nonetheless, it's a blow for UConn football. You hope that they get this right. I'm going to have a piece out on some of the top candidates to keep an eye on. I think they're going to look at potentially keeping the same. David Benedict, their athletic director, I think is going to look at using a similar formula here in terms of adding a veteran coach. Could be somebody like a Joe Moorhead at Akron. Moorhead has done a tremendous job with that program. I know a lot of people have mentioned Brian Kelly, Chip Kelly guys. They're both New England guys with New England ties. I would not rule out either one of those guys. And I think for UConn, if you don't decide to pursue a Joe Moorhead or a Ricky Ronnie from Old Dominion, somebody like that, or a Ryan Carty at Delaware, if you don't pursue somebody like that, yeah, you at the very least put out feelers in terms of Brian Kelly and Chip Kelly, because we know they're both big time winners at the college level. They've won a lot of football games as head coaches. I think either one of them could potentially be a terrific hire. But Gordy Samus, offensive coordinator, is the interim head coach. Another name to keep an eye on if they wanted to keep it in-house. I would think that if they did, he'd be the favorite.
well, just in terms of the either Kelly name, if you want to maintain where you're at right now, that name cachet carries a ton of weight, especially in the recruiting world.
Yep.
So, but my only question for you before we move on, now you mentioned National Signing Day tomorrow. How much does this screw the staff? Or
It screws them up immensely. You've already
yeah,
seen 4 or 5 guys decommit.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
it
problem
hurts.
here.
It hurts.
That,
Listen, I don't care what the situation is. When you're talking about coaching uncertainty, I mean, it hurts you in recruiting. And especially
yeah.
now with this December signing date, it kills you. It kills these programs that are currently vacant and have openings, because now kids are looking at it and saying, well, first of all, I whoever comes in, and if let's say they start over with their staff, those guys didn't recruit me. So
Right.
who's to say they're going to honor the scholarship? That's the sticking point for kids. A lot of people online the last couple of days have been giving kids a lot of crap, but that's your issue here. Your issue is that you can't stay committed to a program that doesn't have a coach, because you don't know if that new staff's going to honor the scholarship offer. And so you have to decommit. You can go back to them if they come back with it, but you have to decommit to give yourself a chance to land somewhere else potentially, if the new staff doesn't see you as a scheme fit and wants to recruit you anymore. So
Well,
there's a lot of moving parts there.
well, I was just gonna say that's where you have to hope that what Mora has done to get the UConn image back up, you need local talent to want to play there now. Because
Yeah.
that's going to make recruiting a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I agree. Of course, the FCS playoffs took place last weekend as well. I think we were both surprised by that Harvard-Villanova score. Harvard really, really fell apart down the stretch. It started with that Penn game that they barely survived. Then they lose 45-28 to Yale in the game. And then they come out last week, man, and they look like a tired football team to me, Kevin. You lose 52-7. No disrespect to Villanova. That's a good program. But to lose 52-7, I don't care what anybody says. The gap between CAA and Ivy League teams doesn't exist, in my opinion, because the Ivy League teams have routinely proven, at least around here, that they could beat those CAA teams. I didn't see this coming at all. That's a disappointing finish to what was a good season for Andrew Orich's squad.
You mentioned this, and it might have been even before the Penn game. The defense. The defense let them down. For 3 straight weeks, the defense screwed them. That offense carried them to 9-0 in a top 10 ranking, and what appeared to be a home game and a bye and everything, and then it all went to crap. Look, you know this better than anybody. Even as an offensive guy this time of year, defense still wins championships a lot of the time. So I think that was their biggest issue. But you got to remember the way that Yale game played out. Yes, 52-0 was surprising, but I wasn't surprised they lost.
52-7. They did score.
Sorry, yes. But thank you. I wasn't surprised they lost that game, though. That's such a hard bounce back, especially 6 days later, whatever it was, 7 days later. That the game is the most emotional game those kids will ever play. So, but it was 31-0 at halftime. Jaden Craig should have had a touchdown pass early in that game to make it, I think, 7-7. Ball got ripped out of a receiver's hands in the end zone. They had 2 or 3 deep balls dropped. And it was a snowball effect. We talked about the snowball effect a lot at BC this year. I think that's ultimately what happened with Harvard. And they made a little bit of news today. Xavier Bascon is going to be their captain next year, which was awesome to see
Yeah,
as a local guy.
Swampscott kid.
Yeah. So their leadership, their talent. Obviously, you're going to lose Jaden Craig, but I think Andrew Ulrich is a great recruiter. I think they'll be able to run it back. Maybe not to the extent of that 9-0 start this year, but yeah, disappointing end. But if as long as Ulrich is there, that team's going to play hard and they're going to be competitive in the Ivy League year in and year out.
Now, their rival Yale, different story.
Unreal.
Unbelievable comeback against Youngstown State, winning 43-42. Kudos to Tony Reno and his son Dante and Joshua Pitzenberger, who had a monster game for the Bulldogs.
That kid's a beast.
He really is. They erased a 28-point deficit, come all the way from behind, as I mentioned, and win 43-42. With the win, they move on in the playoffs. They're going to take on Montana State. But, man, what a comeback for the Yale Bulldogs.
I stopped watching for a bit. As you know, I was packing. 35-7. I believe I kind of checked out a little bit. I came back. It was 42-22 heading to the fourth quarter. You think, all right, at least they made it a game. It's respectable. It'll look better in the history books. But all of a sudden, you look up and there they are celebrating on the field. As a guy who loves running the ball as much as you do, to see what they did with Josh Pitzenberger the last 2 weeks, I think he's been over 30 carries. He's been over 200 yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns this last game. If you can ride a kid like that in the postseason, you're going to be in every game. And then you add on the fact that you have a kid like Dante Reno who still has so much football left in him. He hasn't played a ton of college football at all, which is the scary part for the rest of the Ivy League. And then they have talent on both sides of the ball. Like as long as they stay healthy and the staff stays intact and all that, this Yale team is going to be a problem for years to come.
Yeah, they should be pretty good now. Replacing Pitzenberger is going to be tough. I mean, he won the Ace and Bushnell Award this year as the Offensive Player of the Year in the Ivy League. He's been terrific for them, really, since he stepped foot on campus as a freshman. So he's been phenomenal for them. You mentioned Dante Reno. I think he balances things up with their offense, their passing game. He's gotten better. Nico Brown, that receiving core has gotten better. They can throw the ball now. It's not just you're going to put 8 men in the box and you're going to try to stop Pitzenberger. You're going to have to play some 2 high safeties because, again, if you don't, this team has proven, especially the last 2 weeks, that they can push the ball down the field and make some big plays in the passing game. Now, look, beating Montana State's going to be tough. That's an established FCS program that has had a lot of playoff success in recent years. But I wouldn't doubt Tony Reno's Bulldogs, man. They showed up last week against a very good Youngstown State team that also has a lot of playoff experience and tradition, and they picked up a big win on the road. They can do it again. I think it's going to take a lot more than it took this week, and they cannot fall behind like they did last week. UNH loses 41-3 to South Dakota State in a snowstorm. Bitter end of the season for the Wildcats, but I would say this. I still think 8-5, you retain the Bryce Cowell musket, you make the FCS playoffs for the 17th time in 21 years. I'd say that this was a pretty successful season for the Wildcats, especially when you consider what they graduated from the 2024 squad.
Absolutely. They won 5 straight just to get in. That means you were playing playoff games for the last, month and 2 weeks, pretty much of the season. So, yeah, hats up to Rick Santos. Just year in and year out. We talked about this last week. From Sean McDonald down to Santos. He's kept it going. That train is just, Scott James won Assistant Coach of the Year in the CAA, I believe it was. Just a machine. That UNH program is a machine. They are one of the programs that you try to emulate if you're an FCS team, looking to build and sustain a culture, a winning culture, I should say. So hat tip to them. Obviously, you want to have a better showing in that last game, but given the conditions, given the experience of South Dakota State, which, by the way, the Jackrabbits are just an awesome football team name. That's just an aside. But no, hats up to UNH. And I'd be shocked if they're not right back in the middle of the CAA playoff race next year.
Yeah. No, and of course, URI won to advance for the second straight year. They beat CCSU 27-19 in another great matchup. They played a great game last year as well. They're going to play UC Davis in the second round of the playoffs on Saturday night out in California. But man, what a job by Jim Fleming and his coaching staff getting this URI program back into the second round of the playoffs. I think they have a shot to go out there and potentially win this football game. If they do, they would draw North Dakota State, which, of course, as we all know, would be a tough draw. But nonetheless, let's not think ahead. This team has proven that they are good enough to go on the road and potentially upset someone like UC Davis.
And do not know Jim Fleming not getting that bye is sticking up their ass right now. They are not happy about it, and I think they're using it. I genuinely think Fleming is a guy, and especially playing the number 8 seed, UC Davis, who got that last bye. I thought it was ridiculous that the CAA didn't get one, frankly. I don't know if you felt the same way, given just how good that conference is, but they're using it to their advantage. You have a top-tier quarterback in Devin Farley. You have a wide receiver in Marquise Buchanan, who's as good as anybody at the FCS level, and you're in prime time. I think this is an ESPN2 game, and I think it's the last game on the slate for the FCS playoffs. So they're going to be ready to go, and they're going to want to show the rest of the country and the committee that they should have been the 8 seed.
Yeah, it should be a good game, and I think you're right. I think they are playing with a chip on their shoulders, and they're going to want to prove themselves. MIA Super Bowls, of course, taking place this weekend. Mukala Kabongo, Tyler Emerald, and I will have the high school preview show coming up here shortly. But, of course, it all starts on Thursday with Amesbury Cohasset. You then have Norwell and Fairhaven as the nightcap on Thursday. Friday features Shawsheen and Foxborough. That's a 5 p.m. kickoff. And then the nightcap at 7:45 features Hockomock League rivals North Attleboro and King Philip. On Saturday, you have 4 games at Gillette Stadium, starting with the Division 8 Super Bowl, which is a rematch of last year's D8 Super Bowl between West Boylston and Randolph. The next game after that features Scituate and Tewksbury in the Division 4 Super Bowl. Then after that, you have the Division 2 Super Bowl, which is a battle between Catholic Memorial and Bishop Feehan. And finally, the nightcap on Saturday at 6:15 is the Division 1 Super Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, Xaverian and St. John's Prep. Do you know who I'm impersonating there, by the way?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about him the other day. Keith Jackson, right?
Keith Jackson.
Yeah, you went a little Trump there.
Kevin Stone.
It was half Jackson, half Trump. But
Kevin Stone, the granddaddy of hyperbole. Kevin Stone.
Keith Jackson and Brent Musburger are the 2 goats.
Yeah, Musburger, you are looking live.
Awesome.
Yep, awesome. And you know what? While we're at it, I'll do my quick my quick Chris Collinsworth impression as well. Yeah, this guy Patrick Mahomes, is he special or what? All right. Anyway, by the way, the Chiefs are on Sunday Night Football, so it's going to be a Collinsworth glaze fest. Yeah, this guy Patrick Mahomes is unbelievable. All right. Anyway, so let's get back to the high school Super Bowls. Not stupid football impressions by John Sarianides. Any thoughts on the games? Of course, we jokingly have said all week we're going to be living there this week. You should have set up a cot today. I don't know why you didn't. But any thoughts on these games before we wrap up this show and I go on to the next show to talk about these games?
Always a great weekend. You know, the MIA does a great job. Jim Clark has done a hell of a job putting it on, along with Julia Pagliaro, I believe. I definitely just screwed her name up, but
you did, yeah. Not a surprise. She knows you're a putz.
Look, D2 and D1 for me. You know, and this isn't just to kiss your ass, but King Philip, that game.
Well, we're D3, so you're not kissing my rear
right. D1, D2, and D3.
Yes.
CM is
so there you go. Now you've expanded it. It's 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. No, CM and D2, obviously, everybody always wants to see that. But look, that D3 game, I said this to you last night. I'm going to go down the field to watch that because I want to hear it. It's going to be the most physical game of the weekend, I think, by far. You know, we talked a lot about the Hockomock League last week, and just look at all the Hockomock teams that are back there this weekend. It's the toughest league in maybe all of New England, but at least in Massachusetts by far. That game is going to be an absolute war. And then obviously D1. You know, the D1 storylines are endless. Xaverian going for a 3-peat. St. John's Prep looking to get back on top of the mountain. Two rivals who just played, 3 days ago? Now
Yeah,
have to
and a
play
great
again.
game,
Yeah.
Zavarian winning 21-18. Yep.
So great matchups all around, obviously. But those top three are the bread and butter for me. And yes, we are going to be living there. But again, it's arguably one of our best weekends of the year. So I'm looking forward to it. And I know I'll be looking forward to seeing you Thursday and Saturday, depending on how Friday goes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. If Friday night doesn't go well, you'll see me earlier. If Friday night goes well, I might need a few more minutes. I'm looking forward to the rematches. That
Yeah.
Shawshene Foxborough game in Division 5 is going to be a banger. That's going
That
to be a
was a
hell of a
war last
matchup.
year.
This is the third straight year they're meeting in the playoffs, second straight year they're playing for the D5 state title. To your point, it 100% was a war last year. I expect the same thing this time around. Same thing with that Randolph West Boylston game in D8. That is going to be one hell of a football game to start the day on Saturday. And then you've got a couple of other intriguing matchups. You mentioned KP North, battle of two Hockomock League rivals, King Philip beating North in week 2, 21-7. It's hard to beat a team twice in the same season, and I think the Warriors know that, and they're going to have their hands full against a North Attleboro team that admittedly wanted this rematch with King Philip, so that's going to make for a great game. I'm intrigued by the other divisions as well, that D4 Super Bowl, Scituate, the defending champ, going up against a Tewksbury team that has been a wagon all year long. They've looked like the favorite all year, but you can never, ever count out Scituate. Herb Devine's squad is always well coached. Grayson Foley, Johnny Donovan, these guys have played in big games at Gillette Stadium, so they're used to the stage. So there's a lot of fascinating storylines as we go into the MIAA state championship games this weekend. And of course, Connecticut was supposed to kick off their playoffs tonight, but because of the inclement weather, the games did get pushed back to tomorrow night. Rob Gulo, Andy Close, and Craig Boland are going to be out there for New England Football Journal. We'll have coverage of 3 games tomorrow night. Craig will be in Fairfield County. He's got Greenwich Staples, which should be a terrific matchup, a rematch from last year's playoffs. And Rob and Andy will have games as well. So we'll have you covered throughout the night and throughout the week. And, of course, Sunday's games in Connecticut were now bumped to Monday. So we will have more coverage on Monday. And, of course, it will all culminate next Saturday, December 13th, with the state title games in Connecticut. 3 games at a Root Field on the campus of Central Connecticut State University and 3 games at the Rent in Hartford. So should be fantastic. But we still got plenty of playoff action left with Connecticut. Again, they kick off their playoffs tomorrow night. It should be a fun time indeed. All right, final thoughts here, Stone, before we wrap it up and I go over and I talk high school football with Kabongo and Amaral, the law firm of Kabongo and Amaral.
Nope, see everybody Thursday, Friday, Saturday this weekend, and we'll obviously have Yale and NURI covered as well.
Yeah, plenty of coverage, and as always, I remind you, for $2.99 a month, you get some of the best football coverage in New England. Visit anyfootballjournal.com, go over to New England Football Journal membership, and again, like I said, for $2.99 a month, you get some of the best football coverage around. You're basically giving up a cup of coffee. I think you can make that sacrifice. It's the best way to support us. Stone and I aren't sitting on ivory towers because of this website. We're putting every penny back into the business. And trust me when I tell you, we put in a lot of hours, and I know we don't want people to feel sorry for us. We do it because we love it. But at the end of the day, we do put every penny we make back into the business to grow it and make it bigger and better. So again, visit anyfootballjournal.com today and subscribe. We really do appreciate your support, and we appreciate all of our subscribers and followers. All right, Stone, great job tonight. We'll do this again next week.
Sounds good.
Kevin Stone, king of hyperbole. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode of the New England Football Show. For Kevin Stone, I'm John Sarianides. Until next week, get out there and enjoy the Super Bowls this weekend. If you're in Connecticut, get out there and enjoy the playoff games. Peace.
See ya.